And we are live. Hello, everyone. My name is Richard Millett, the one. And this is the quarantine stream, the 60-second one. Let us hear the ever beautiful, ever wonderful, ever lovely, ever green quarantine stream theme, shall we? Yes, none of that. Beautiful. All right. Are we all doing okay out there? It's called Flowers at the Foot of the Cave. Swinging light bulb above a cracked basement window, a painting depicting the creation of creation, and a makeshift bed. I made up a new name for you that I'll only keep in my head. My head. Look at the jewel resting in the bottom of the wooden cup, or the stack of handwritten sheets explaining the steps of the ritual in rich, deep red. And the names of everyone there exist in my head. My head. Charcoal renderings of saints ripped from a magazine and pinned to the door. Dented bits of metal shaped to make a mosaic and pushed into the floor. Quarter-inch thick spray-painted silver ribbons looped like ringlets in the air, and the floating stray white veins from a feather landing on your hair. Here I sit, half childish, with freshly washed clothes strewn over the chair. A tray with orange peels, melon rinds, and empty glasses rests balanced on the table's edge, while I'm reading a map leading to a room more colorful than the womb, where I can overhear things other than gurgling and organs rushing. But still, this will always be in its infancy, because love is where Genesis greets infinity. And for proof, you can look in my eyes, even though I won't confirm or deny how much of this is true. But I trust that will get worked out by you. All right. This is called Submerging. My thoughts stop. My muscles go slack. I sink into the gray water. I rise, pick up shells, and see something inside. I see a spotlight bathed in cream, a turtle swimming slowly, and bioluminescent plankton out past the reef. I am not the follower. I have nothing to prepare for. I am not the leader. I've got no form. At this moment, I'm no one's son, except for my father's father's father. My head stays underneath. No new oxygen, but for the time being, I've got everything that I need. I'm not the follower. I've got nothing to wait for. I'm not the leader. I'm just being born. At this moment, I'm no one's son, except for my mother, the clouds, the sun, the land, the water. All is one. All is one. I have come. All is one. Open reach. All is one. To infinity. All is one. Circle soul. All is one. Bird's beak. All is one. Silver seed. All is one. We have come. It's called Investigating Mitsy. She rides around the merry-go-round wearing satin slippers, chewing pink peppercorns. Her eyes are a miracle in the way they paint names in the minds of the rain clouds. The lightning reaches out to introduce itself. The Queen of Atlantis draws filigree for the king while he's taking his bath. Bristling lips kiss the teeth of the key ring and lick ankles and mouth. She holds a bouquet of clarinets, wearing a lavender herringbone robe and nodding at buckets of soap. Her elbows hold her weight on the sand dune decorated with still wet seashells and teacups half filled with a treacle she pours out onto tree roots. The Queen of Atlantis plans where the French and English will meet. The king eats suckling pig and excites the court over soaking his feet. How are we doing out there? Doing good. Beautiful. That's what we like. It's called the Vatican Vaults. Shelves lined with caskets, ripe fruit piled up in baskets. Sugar cubes and teacups rattle as saucers are dragged across tablecloths. Outside, a crowd sits murmuring. A harmonium coughs discordantly off the spokes of a bicycle wheel, and snakeskin is carefully wrapped around palms. Two men each wear a veil, one off mauve, the other pink lady red. Gravel sits at the bottom of stained glass vials, and mink pelts are smoothed out over the tiles. Three elderly spinsters raise their voices in praise, their weathered hands shaking at the sky. Gold medals tied around their waists reflect the sun directly into children's eyes. Four blind beggars fool the crowd into believing they're brothers who compete by tying knots and rope faster than any comers, the act only ending at dusk when they split their spoils. Stars roll around the moon, back and forth from end to end. Clouds erase them away when each new day begins. It's called Pool. Your love brings me peace. Your beauty brings me fantasy. Your thoughts bring me reality. Our love, so naked and pure, of the dirt, of the clouds. Your strength gives me courage, your dreams complete mine, our circle forever revolving. This is called White Apple. The audience glares. The audience is alone, projected onto the cities, moving mouths, upside down, silent cement, struggles for breath, lets the water run, walks with a stilted, failing gait. The water runs in the documentary. Behind the page, a lesson in taking what you need, wanting to know so bad, so bad, so thirsty, so eager for the seed. Roman columns, deep shadows, buttressed arches, fallen collective breach, eyes cast upon the outer circles, eyes cast upon the oval rings over the sea, eyes cast on eternity, eyes cast on maternity. Then across the valley, across the street, he can see the cracks of the statue's feet. He crashed his car against a building, against a lamppost, fluttering fingers ivory, dancing around, darting mercury. The survivalist juts forward, head leering off his shoulders, sees the wet walkways glistening, over-enunciates to nobody listening. His face an impression in plaster, refers to a thought he had earlier, but it's too austere to articulate. He's had too much sugar to hold his hands straight. As the glass carton breaks, he collapses, the cream running parallel over his veins. The audience on stage, the public face encased in a clear plastic capsule with evenly explained rules typed on an eggshell card displayed underneath, each remark catalogued and critiqued, each dismal dismissal a prized antique. Washed clean when the day ran dry, the only dot in the satellite's sky, the audience needing permission, needing drink, needing oxygen again. The combination hidden in international waters, the shadow shining on the light. Everything in plain sight secret, a camera on its tripod, spinning a circular angle, a code transferred, captured, held by an ascending angel. All are welcome, but come open-handed, without guests or family. You'll enter easier naked, and your intentions won't be mistaken. Jagged rocks under the rushing river, which lead to the lake. The scene is a remake, a three-point star shape, superimposed with stretching hands, making a cityscape, and cold exhaling, creating, hovering clouds. Silent! Take out the sound. I want to hear the rushing. I want to hear the pounding. I want to hear the happening after the action, the empty air in my ears. I want to hear the flying birds make their calls, hear the echo reverberate off of ancient stone walls. It's called Cheltenham Girl. Like a cloud, beautiful sound, standing before the signal. When the light shines on the ground, it reflects off the wheel. Parking lot next to the short building on the edge of the desert, she sees it's harder to be a number when you're just starting out as a visitor. Cheltenham Girl. Cheltenham Girl. Clouds can't create the shapes they make or hold onto any rain. Precious, temporary, holding no domain. No machines, no cell phone or computers clicking through broken links. Credit card, social security needed. She'll refuse to register. She really will. Cheltenham Girl. Cheltenham Girl. Every day, another wish, another mile, closer to the point where I can portray it. Until then, all I'll do is sing to her spirit. She will return. She will return. This is called Shower. Graceful heaven falling, encapsulating caressing beauty, swimming in a small cherubic pool, heightening and deadening, red waves surging in elegance, crest of peaceful thoughts floating over my mind, universal pulse. This is called Two Franciscan Nuns. Chewing mint leaves while crossing the Calumet River, the paper mill's exhaust pipes interrupt the vista. Mules weighted with surge protectors, hairspray, and cassettes. A riverboat of morphine-addicted ghosts over there on the left. Two Franciscan nuns wanted to build a hospital but settled for organizing games of chance. In their hotel rooms, they squeeze out extra acidic orange juice and excommunicate people with unpleasant names from the phone book. Two Franciscan nuns helped decorate an admiral in the pensioner's home after he'd misplaced his uniform. They blessed his pills, kissed his parakeet, and as he slept, gathered sets of his false teeth to sell at the swap meet. A brain with blood and oxygen is better than a fish who talks. What some people see as skin discoloration is in fact the natural pigmentation when viewed from the inside. Some newspapermen have always known this, and indeed, they have nothing to hide. It's called Parallel Place. Actually, no, it isn't. This is called Sympathy for the Cowboy. Then we shall do Parallel Place. Sympathy for the Cowboy, all alone on the range. After the war ended, he was forced to change his name. Sympathy for the cowboy holding his dying brother, who begged with his last breath, "Tell mother I died with honor." Sympathy for the meth lab and all who fight in harm's way, who hope to abolish minimum wage and charge only $15 a day. Sympathy for modern times and those who argue they're right. Sympathy for the victim who already has all the laws on their side. Sympathy for the student who's only lived in theory, in a hammer and sickle t-shirt, walking away from the barricade. Sympathy for the lawsuit and all who fought for reform. Sympathy for the bumper sticker telling you to be reborn. Sympathy for the stallion, running free and too wild to ride. Sympathy for the idiot who tried. His wife cried, him and his foolish pride. Sympathy for the strawberry, trial separations, press releases pleading for privacy, and, of course, doing it for the kids. Sympathy for the nihilist, sucking on his cigarette, cutting you off in traffic, no constraints of guilt or regret. Sympathy for the stalker, on his computer outside, looking at pictures of you in high school, saving each one, even if it takes him all night. Sympathy for the cowboy, whose son moved off the ranch, said he might be coming back soon, if there's no change of plans. Now, I live in a parallel place where the land is level, where the streets are bright in the evenings, and I know what tomorrow brings. I live in a parallel place where the wind is cold, where gray-haired men sweep the band shell and foxes sleep underneath church bells. I hear the lank-haired women walking in the morning, their faces shaped by the sun. I live in a parallel place where there's endless electricity with very low voltage, where everyone dies of old age. I live in a parallel place where rain runs into a tunnel, where able-bodied women clear the gutters and dragonflies rise in a slow-motion flutter. I see the able-bodied men hauling fallen branches, their faces shaded by the sun. I live in a parallel place where people speak in peace, where the foreman's spouse greets the mailman in a see-through blouse. I live in a parallel place where the forest faces east, where contracts are written in invisible ink and codes are created with a wink. I see all the people breathing through the day, their faces graced by the sun. Blissful cardinals, blissful infants, blue reflections magnified 10,000 times, blue beams bouncing off aged lenses, radiant artifacts, radiant heirlooms, white sails blistered by the salty sun, white china stacked up in cupboards, shining domes, shining necklaces, green feelings balanced on a yardstick, green parchment weighted down by grapes. This is one that we don't do very often. Perhaps we should. This is called Source Mission. You might want to settle in. There will be no characters, narratives, metaphors, images, symbols. Residents of an ocean liner, driven to restless flings and superficial passions as their promised approach to shore gets repeatedly suspended. Pre-adolescent alone in a church basement rifles through carelessly assembled heaps of musty paperbacks with torn covers and frayed corners. Noticing one with copious notes on the margins, scrawled hastily with a drying felt-tip pen, they fold it under their jacket and return upstairs. She pressed all her weight down onto her left elbow as she described to her social worker that she was able to physically feel her brain pulse when her instincts were interfered with. She said it was a process she developed over the course of many early hours trying to codify communication with her unseen self. A pathway. Ticking clock, rotary telephone, cake knife, porcelain ashtray. She breaks the tip off another pencil, trying to create a cipher. Previous attempts at codes and translations withdraw in her memory as she tightens her concentration. She is aware that she is unblemished in this moment. Abruptly, she starts reading the newspaper. The headlines form a confused collage about co-opting the transfer of control, living in history, the past as a waiting room, a purgatory for poorly trained animals. An explorer who discovers a new land and plants their flag has no responsibility to share this news with their mother country. The explorer retains their rights to observe and stage rituals for any protracted incubation period as their studies dictate. An enforcer lists all available facts convinced their activities serve as a barrier for order. Patent purchasers pleas for transparency. An enforcer operates to deliver a verdict with no obligation to prove a link between accuracy of findings and means of understanding. An enforcer is a weaponless assassin. An enforcer insists they are the first pioneer. After each evening rain, the drippings get preserved for either research or raw materials. Holder watches hunting videos, is inspired to buy a gun. Holder spends weekends at the firing range, sets notifications for pertinent updates, sees a man committing a hideous act and remains still. Holder watches hunting videos, becomes his twin. The enforcer, as silent partner, calls their modest home bought at public auction a mansion. The enforcer installs surveillance equipment that assures their omnipresence. Having achieved this feeling, the enforcer laughs themselves to sleep. She imagines her tongue bulging into a ripe plum with reptilian skin while she runs. Her pores can exhale for her on land or underwater. She pulls out a razor and slits holes in car windows. An explorer can extract all available data without fear of taking on the form of its source. The morning's diamond eyes glance back to the retreating night, its recollections rattling like titanium prizes, while seeing swallows hide behind clouds. Every condensed view is a pact or proposition. The ocean moves, immense and unworried that someone will try to challenge it, to extinguish their torch and satisfy their inclinations. An anticipated shift in climate, causing signals to dissipate into cackling static, torrents implode into ice. Lost in the projections are the flickering attitudes and climactic dimensions. Patience. The tension lessened, the explorer striding through thin, hovering fog while receiving encrypted statistics about disseminating energy and particles and living one step left of law. When the explorer was young, their friend killed a queen ant and laughed at the other ants running frantically around the corpse. Stunned at the realization that he was encircled by the unreachable, the explorer can disappear into outlets. Children as cheap electronics. The way to rout out was to present a sequence of indistinguishable mosaics, obfuscate interpretations with no deprivations or consequences, to leave leaks forming. Then, the aim was plain. Advertise yourself as an erudite upcoming sophisticate, which would be accomplished through cultivating opinions on topics such as economics, ancient civilizations, contemporary fashions, and modern literature. There was never a worry that the loose apparatuses of these perspectives could be bastardized, where the predictions and warnings could be reconciled with the record of recent events. The mandate was clear, the first clarity in many years. Everyone had to purge their assigned personas. Any inherited religion, political leanings, or deference to authority figures had to be erased. The basic inanities of grooming and greetings could be disregarded or derided. You could evade evasive questions. Replies no longer had to be forced into paragraphs, or even need to be realistic if the inquisitor was not worthy of respect. A simple photograph of a landscape blurs into fractions of distortions, the faintest grain of the original, imperceptible to anyone but the manipulator. A photograph enclosed in glass, the explorer rubs birch seeds against the smooth surface, thinks continuously about which pictures they would capture. Capture, then release. Unceasing propulsion toward junkyards and insectival sacks. The photograph enclosed in glass is less than one half of what the eye buries deep in the explorer's consciousness. The movies of the mind aren't enough. On the rooftops, we met the moon and extended our arms. The body became sacred. Black and green heartbeats. No statues required. Cardboard panels held in place by cracking masking tape. A makeshift memorial, spiritless cemetery. An overturned table, garbled audio recordings, and soap lather. Throwing vases from windows, hearing them shatter. Midnights in wigs, makeup, furs, and high heels. Broken storefronts, algae-covered money flung across countertops. A crude rendering of a burning flag, cutlery knocked to the carpet. Celebratory dancing in dark rooms. Strangled skulls under stiff hair, inflexible thoughts cloaked as terror. A mite struggling across dry glue, writhing and boring to find what isn't solid. Unopened book brought into the kitchen, hissed with suggestion. Spat against a wall to wipe away a stain. On the banks of the Potomac was a temporary recreation of Speaker's Corner, the embedded fundamentals of the parent culture, now vivid and confrontational, the rejoinders not at all forthcoming until the demanded stammering altered into a quieter threat of violence. The enforcer had his approved justifications. His cruelty and perplexity yearned for an explosion, a flush of his dormant proclivities. The rest of his waking hours were stretched with an arid sourness, an irritation that throbbed at the top of his cervical vertebrae. What was left of his curiosity sat like encrusted bolts behind his eyes, an angry raven hoping to plunge and peck out chunks of young tissue. Punched in the bicep until he grew uninterested. No intervention. The individual who was ambivalent about having been born affected being bored. Punched to the floor, then mauled until adults intervened. A late show everyone in the room watched. I watched. It was easy to recognize the enforcers, with their crisply condescending countenance. Their banal objects, such as binders and staplers, were wielded like firearms. It was easy to avoid the obvious. The enforcer is disguised as the purest incorruptible antidote, the corrective swinging rope, the dilated pupil of absolution, walking into your sketches, sighing in your closet. Loss of legislation, films without frames. Loss of restriction, language is mystery or performance. Sound transposed on graph paper, measured, then left unobserved for organic variation. Their statements may be magnified into joyless drops. Their actions may be magnified into a stilted bow. But punishments leave you immaculate if you resist food from their earth. A warehouse filled with matches meekly faces the sun, staring at the mirror again. Its lines and patches swim in endlessly moving puzzles as the potassium spots on their teeth pass like amoebas. Draws a question mark on their cheek, scours a bisected blueberry against an emery board. A fleeting infection, increasing unease, a vigorous scrubbing of the back of the head. What's left can hardly breathe on its own and offers a weak handshake to its kin. When they would talk to themselves, the etymology was uncontested and unedited, free of dread, free of the need to be understood, free of the need to be articulate. When they were heard talking to themselves, what followed were disparate ideas about automatically generated embryos, cynical ringmasters, commands that lay still in gardens that grow wildly and overtake alleys. They were asked if they had been talking to themselves, and what followed was a jeering yet ineffectual sing-song rhyme, loudly intoning the barely coherent plot of a novel, pausing to write a letter which was then placed into a tin canister. Asked to clarify one's deeds proved to be an impossible request, no instances to be exposed, no motive to be considered. When talking to themselves, they would often rephrase the questions they overheard others asking. Are you a bigot? Are you unarmed? Are you making a comparison? Asked to clarify one's dialect proved to be an impossible request, no instances to be reenacted, no play being crafted. The view of the main yard can be seen only through a lens that works in reverse, reducing scope and making faces anonymous, a cold-nerved inversion of the first intention, procedural mockery, burying of degrees, mimic of belief that only ends when all agree that this is all that they can see. Isolation squirms in her trachea, and it will never resolve, tenses her jaw to stay compliant. The interim professor denied himself consolation and limited his classes to male-only attendance. He slashed the syllabus to allow for his lectures on what situations were appropriate for his students to don masks and terrify each other in darkness. Unfinished, forsaken productions, unmourned by the public, owners, and aesthetes, spilling white wine in a graveyard, a legal den of thieves. Tarnished violet brass spoons balanced on the sprained wrists of a frightened appellate judge, senator flicking at an abacus 75 miles away. The view of the main yard is populated with sagging leaves and tiny bones sticking up from the parched ground. The warden's search for language about language ends with an empty envelope in his safe. The warden's wife discontentedly displays her self-inflicted gashes as proof that her flesh will only ever be a victim of her psyche. The warden lit the effigy after forcing his way through the mob. The sheriff, who normally oversaw such gatherings, backed away, and as the fire ran rampant, people furiously threw refuse into each other's mouth. The warden's wife stared at her dog's engorged stomach, while picturing its distended liver circling inside. She knew that soon she'd have to seem amused and pose for portraits. The warden's wife maintained that any state-sanctioned writings or paintings submitted for their exhibition be first personally reviewed by herself and then a handful of experts. The matters they ruminated on were, will this offend our sponsors? Does this creation portray a positive outcome? Is this a story we are willing to tell? The exhibition itself was met with muted plaudits. Patrons noted themes of helplessness, rehearsal, internalized tyranny, oppressor obsession, denunciation outbursts, and complications in conflicted diatribes. A small number of visitors noted entries that were particularly unconvincing, since they had conspicuous deficiencies in incisive brevity. List of entertainers, list of equipment, list of local ordinances, list of lighting cues, list of techniques used, list of listeners listening to each other listening. The painting hanging on the wall is sacred. It is a pardon from subjugation. It is the escape from age. Its information contains an antenna that connects spine to space. Its information can be stolen and hidden in guest bedrooms behind gilded fixtures. Its information can be frozen and examined in decontaminated, temperature-controlled vaults. Everyone gets scarred by the vocational abstinence that happens when an arrogant soul disagrees that molecules getting reconfigured into shapes of radio waves can transmit past time and place. In each entry, each submission is met with sternly inexpressive non sequiturs. Full immersion in a new atmosphere and exterior, one wider than a planet, volunteering oxygen, gold, and shelter. Sweat that dissolves against the wall, a cave in a mountain, a tunnel in a white dwarf, quarries holding sunken canyons and shipwrecks that affects the heat of lurking phantoms, and climbers blinded by their own nearsightedness. Life of a voyeur, self-inflicted chronicler, hushed and obedient to the minute. The unformed force of youth, fluid light beams, urgent voices unleashed while sleeping. When enforcers subject nature to inhibition and act as welcoming ventriloquists before inert dismissal and forgetfulness encroaches, the informed force of youth with the spirit for reclamation of oppressions can penetrate the latent rights in selves and birth the reappearance of selves. For those whose center and circles do not match. Misery is a mirage. The genetic visual signifiers, well-dressed, moderately expensive automobiles, shrewd career decisions give no meaningful indication of psychological affinities or ability to will oneself to traverse invisible scenery and comb the chosen artifacts. Misery is necessary given to illusions and grand pronouncements, and the validated desire to take up arms. Principled sincerity receives an equally earnest response, though hard to hear through stifled laughter, unburdened by exploitation, scornful of discrimination. From embers, white horses returned from illness, sanctified and cured, petition put to the priest that was damned as parody, and a dearth of elucidation around ways to differentiate between visitation and abduction finally left one to wonder if self-possession was worth seeking. The tips of Grecian pottery wait to be seen in museums, solitary sculpture standing in the gallery, hallway, music silently rests in the bell of a horn, words whisper to each other on the page, the spine of the person without a notion turns rotted and charred and twists off, snapping away from the brain, leaving it to float as speckled runny yolk. Solo performance for no audience on a gleaming alabaster stage that from the opera boxes seems to be yellowing from exposure to the antique amber lighting. Suddenly people push through the enormous heating grates and tumble through the aisles. An orgy begins. The stage is ignored. The point and purpose of the enforcer is in constant identification, instant and unable to wash away the components of unremarkable choices branded into a plywood plank, then copied, distributed, and saved. The enforcer adopts the posture of a scholar to test chemical combinations as a form of comedic relief while advising spectators of behaviors to remain mindful of in case they mistakenly uncover evidence. The explorer is liquid and can rush more stealthily than a snake past its prey, softly cradling secrets while withholding no solutions. A culture of explorers, winding through locks, their practices seen as obscure or nonsensical while abandoning the abuse of truth. The explorer provides an account of experiences. The enforcer prefigures the briefest number of conclusions. The explorer can learn all language backward and forward. The explorer can use all language backward and forward. The enforcer says these skills are a menace. The enforcer decries lack of methodology. The explorer knows there are no guides in ecstasy. The enforcer divides categories. The explorer is infinitely everything, innately anything. In the end, one may look at a sheet of butcher paper and say, I saw disconnected dots in random primary colors. I see palm print patterns emerge. What I saw along the way. Credit cards vanish from people's hands. Confessionals burst into smog. A laboratory assistant transmogrify into a silver bar. A director transmogrify into a sugar cube. Dehydrated wheat become an impassive crowd. A hammer become a seductress. An omitted name lead a council, and the council leaders sit beside a sword. Factory-sourced protein revive wildlife. A sanctuary and its altar coded in a duet of idioms and contexts. One camera overhead, one at eye level, no panning, filters, or other effects. The footage to only be viewed unspoiled by cuts and scratches. The shrine beneath the post office filled with the remnants of fertility components. Scattered gems, sapphire pins, knives pointing out from tree trunks. Stagnant water stuck to frogs and worms. The father pulled beets and carrots from the dirt. The mother fused minerals with collected metals. The father and mother recited Shakespeare from memory. She said into his shoulder, I fear missing precision. He said into her neck, I fear I say too much too quickly. Foreign correspondent pondering how to explain occurrences to viewers they'll never comprehend. Southern transplant wandering the East Coast for a tavern or pool hall that resembles the neighborhoods they were raised in. Freshmen searching for unmarked architecture off campus. Village elder sore and calloused after issuing blessings. Exhausted matador walking through a desolate stadium on unsteady legs. Teenagers murmur to each other in the back row of the school bus. The Star of David and birthday streamers, rice paddies and ballpoint pens, thumbtacks and valleys, the shuddering candle, the cobalt blue plug, confusing the senses into feeling arbitrary emotions. Generous and divine initial atoms to fluctuate between mediums, and restoration of radios. The explorer who cannot travel can tear into soil or erect a tower. The explorer is able to see the bend in the end of the galaxy. Identical guards and family members decorating after an outdoor cremation. Namesake and heir quoted while exiting the governor's limousine. Child laying back on bathroom tiles, pouring warm water over their chest. Distant noise of sliding steel interrupts watching broadcast of sociopath's parole hearing. Daybreak on the curated pasture, bottles of chlorine and a row of wrenches. The teacher was upset that the pupil had contradicted their key argument, twitchily turning in bed, powerless to stop their churning cognizance. Later, the pupil apologized and added it was for survival. Survival of the motion, of the result. Blankets spread across the brush, weighted with polished mirrors. Bare branches reaching down, sundials formed by their shadows. A pair of eyes sees its reflection off the aluminum finish. Anne, Mary, and William stand in front of each other. Doors are open, documents found. Everyone chooses a room. It's called Windy Sequins. Through the missing bricks, you can see a banquet table with a candelabra crooked from water-falling wax. On the other side of the missing bricks is a tablecloth of faintly gray claw stains left by mourning doves. Through the missing bricks, there is a banquet table, heaving with indentations from apples, persimmons, cantaloupes, and pears. On the other side of the missing bricks, there is a deer walking in the distance while the finger painting floats to the ground. Through the missing bricks, there is a banquet table with unopened telegrams and sturdy silver trays stacked with books about the Enlightenment. On the other side of the missing bricks, there is a pebble garden placed on a tree branch next to a mortar and pestle. Through the missing bricks, there is a banquet table lined along the bottom right edge with bowls of cold dandelion soup. Seated 45 degrees away from the banquet table is a man with a salt and pepper waxed mustache humming waltzes and complaining about the distortions of sounds and colors. 110 years old, and he doesn't know that electric blue can be beautiful too. This is called Sacrifice Satellite. Moments before dawn, phone ringing, unable to suss if it was happening from impressions born in shallow sleep, while neighbors' lights flicked on across walkways and driveways and sidewalks. Or as the drift seized me back in, we were gun runners, trapped in a house, detained by police, threatened by rivals, but I was able to slither out a side door and snuck away to a cafe where I was supposed to summon assistance, but decided instead, the hell with them. I was called to a room. The walls of the hallway were blue, and when I entered, there they sat, looking exactly as they did in 1984. When one spoke, there was no sound from their mouths, but the words synced loudly in my skull. Crushed flowers float downstream in the rainwater, and handmade smokestacks drip steam on half-awake blades of grass. New nuns count the gray hairs of their predecessors as they scan old photographs. Will they question who's alive in heaven? Are their words papering a mountain? They will have a moment where they behold the beauty of an empty screen or unplowed, snow-covered street. Lost in a world between are the souls who only dream when looking up. Thick, shimmering splotches of gray grease liquefy and start to drip down rust-colored walls of skins, watched by a babe with a flashbulb embedded in their wrist, who sits on gouged black and gold tiles in the center of a disused ballroom dance floor among carelessly flung piles of metal prong monitors, cords, discs, spilled coffee grounds, broken vodka bottles, and asymmetrical platinum wigs. Every year there's a whisper the inventory will get a clean transfer. Winston Dubois knew the money recovered was wrapped in a mosquito net and secured in the back of a carriage. The horse stopped in front of an Air Force base, which got inadvertently captured on videotape, with the footage dissected by theorists for decades. Desmond Hampton learned Tony Chamberlain had double-crossed him as he drank milk and clapped erasers together outside his classroom. His signature had been forged and hidden throughout the system. The younger best brother thinks, if only I were a CEO buying companies whose names I don't know and could leverage my credibility to simultaneously flaunt my status and champion myself as an obscurity. While the older best brother thinks, if only I were an oligarch and had a tapestry of machinery to do what I want, live in seclusion, invest in rare art, and pay for a hooker who looks like my daughter. Lost in a world between are the souls who only dream when looking up. The beams of starshine light land everywhere and leave valley-wide fingerprints for 7 years. Minute glass tubes can shiver without bursting, squinting on glistening diamonds laid out on linens, spirals scrawled on maps with the location leading inside a puzzle box, while a fungus slides up to a microscope and mixes with vinegar and bleach, circles of sapphires line linoleum tile with a surface so improbably clear it mimics a screen, lost in a world between, on a souls who only dream when looking up. This is dedicated to the horrors of all the different types and various fucking stripes. Imperialism takes many shapes, doesn't it? It's called cruelty-free heroin. When the Guardian goes mad, the sun rains against their eardrums, indistinguishable from Morse code tapping out on a copper plate. Yes, when the Guardian has gone mad, they're found singing love songs to tanks, draping staircases and flags, breaking car windows to decorate their faces with the glass. When the Guardian goes mad, they're captured pushing a pickaxe into an LED screen and detained for threatening to throw snakes at gas station attendants. When the Guardian goes mad, people suddenly remember to turn on AM radio and patiently follow guidelines before filing a full report, though there are always doubters and passers-by who start conspiracies, the usual being that this was some sort of planned distraction. If the Guardian goes mad, they'll arrive at every award ceremony with a mirror in hand and a ribbon under their chin and make demands to review the voting processes when they don't win. If the Guardian goes mad, they'll rue the day they lost control of their relationships, spending weeks hiring staff to bury paperwork they'll insist doesn't exist. If the Guardian goes mad, all their meals shall consist of orange peels pulled from chain-link fences and burned coffee flavored with molded peach preserves, though there are always doubters ready to offer an opinion of unverifiable proof, summarizing the death and maps are the only real measures of impact. Can you imagine being that fucking sick? If the Guardian cracks up, they'll spend bleak days envisioning trees committing suicide, grandmothers doing crystal meth for the first time, and gnats smeared into toothpaste. If the Guardian cracks up, 7 strangers stuck in a bank will claw at each other to seek cold air in the vault and wait for their families and firemen to arrive and dig them out. If the Guardian cracks up, pirates will walk their own planks and devour themselves once they hit the water, thrashing back at their gnashing teeth, running the seas red until hunter and prey are finally won. Ignorance, arrogance. The pest control man said unto me, when I was in Japan, I bought cherry bread in a can. I opened it with a knife and slit off the wrapper. The air bubbles stayed floating around in my mouth, and I rolled them around and around until I returned back to the West. Bliss, tolerance. The pest control man said unto me, sometimes my apartment building turns into a vending machine, and I get deposited out into the evening to provide goods and services for lucky couples with good taste and a few wandering dollars to rub together. called Should I Go In? The silver pepper mill whispers of the hammer that she's an airport, and though she never really shows anybody, I still know that she's an airport. If you stop at her coffee shop, she'll charge you extra for a plastic top. The well-water ice cubes have heard this tale told before, but she's an airport. A zebra's chewing gum can confirm the reports. She's an airport. If you take off your shoes after the security stop, she'll throw them in the air and they'll land in the baggage cart. Run down the runway into the center of the day where the sun is pointing down to the ground. Reach all the way down to touch your toes and remember a story that you'll want to pass along someday. Run down the runway into the center of the day where the sun is pointing down to the ground. Reach all the way down to touch your toes and remember a story that you'll want to pass along someday. She's an airport and her father is a farm filled with corn stalks. Her mother is a candy factory spinning reflective baubles. Cessna tropria dinara retaf siam raf delifa tudus rax sklats retam saya idnak irakaf ganinipsevet kelfer selbuab. Cessna tropria dinara retaf siam raf delifa tu nrax Glats, retam saya idnaki rakaf, ganinipselvet kelfer selbuab. She's an airport, and her father is a farm filled with corn stalks. Her mother is a candy factory spinning reflective baubles. If I could talk to you, I will some more. And just like in today's world of opinion and denunciation, and admirable like in pictures and friendliness and outward inliness, maybe I'm on the thrust of that. She dreamed she was a train draped in robin's egg lace. She couldn't keep still in one place. She dreamed she was the only train running on the 4th of July, filled with whipped cream to burst and streamers to fly. She dreamed she was a train running past the impound lot, and after every platform on the route, she'd whisper, I still love Phil. She was sad when they closed the gates up at night. She dreamed she was a train filled with die-cast metal engines and cowboy hats, ordered by the civil rights worker's favorite daughter. She dreamed she was a train, her earrings flashing orange lights. She waves hello to the one car she'd stopped at the tiny suburban crossing at 4:30 a.m. in the morning. A train to get the tracks so loose and rattling. Lone car, one light shining down on it. And the flashing train lights, the rattling, the lone car, the rattling tracks reminds her of those uncles and aunts talking loudly over each other at her grandma's birthday, arguing about the price of grapes, baseball scores, and what route they took to get there that day. Rattling tracks reminds her of those uncles and aunts speaking loudly over each other at her grandma's birthday. 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 This is called Blue Soaked Scepter. Kink in my neck that runs to my kidneys, distracting me from movies I've long since memorized and repeating quotations I've lived inside of, and I've no desire to rewrite history that doesn't concern me. When what I didn't know already felt familiar, when I saw the inscription on my commemorative plaque had been worn back to smooth silver, when I slipped behind the mist, changed clothes, washed my hands, and shaved, with no light and with no intention of anyone seeing my face for a while, I was willingly walked through a coal-stained city lot and deposited in the back seat of an already running, windowless army green car, which was then locked from the outside. Mary! Had I abandoned my practice? Committed an indirect affront in my brief absence? My name is Keith. The beggar at my door raised his arm but soft, while I listened to his parables that had no sinner. My name is Luke. With an auspicious mistress beside me, I looked at a baby looking out a window at fluttering street signs. My name is Julia. My temper was gentle as I read a sermon called, "Are You Here to Celebrate the Death of Death?" My name is Giles. I wish that I'd been obscured when my ears were bitten with endearment while I was plainly ignored. My name is Grace. I was observed by 3 people whose accounts proved suggestible and fractured. My name is Abigail. I faced hard construction when I, in truth, spoke forcefully about my forged fingerprints. My name is Megan. I spent twilight emptied, save for sketching a red tunic on bent paper. My name is Brooke. I was registered in a hotel under an assumed name and made lists of families that I pitied. My name is Gabriel. I singed my hair and clothes trying to be recalled. The sky has been moonless for 29 nights. Why couldn't I stay? I was bothered by the way the streetlights hit the trees and reflected off the leaves. I took a knife and short length of rope. 6 hours later, I'm waiting for you to arrive, carrying a scepter and wearing a breastplate with frayed shoulder blades and exhausted eyes. I'm waiting for you to arrive, sitting cross-legged on the sodden deck with wayward souls who were barely seen. I leapt off the ledge and was soon out of haunt as I climbed the concave shores, wondering if I should forage, catch a gudgeon, or eat unbruised fruit that had fallen. The gravelly, guttered soil gave way to encroaching forest, dense with rows of weighted, wet purple limbs that succumbed to gravity and wind. Then abruptly I was in the center of a champaign, and the only objects I found were short rows of tree stumps and stones, each carved with the query, "What made you look here?" I jaunced away into the odd even and was again pursued by the thicket's reach. The thorns licked my calves, the anthills shone like pebbled glass. I brushed past a frog with a violet tongue and discolored teeth who gulped for relief, while his body remained static like a splayed thread in aspic. I made my way into the antres and found myself prating, "Prithee, pray tell what you remember of working your hands into the mud and feeling it curl up underneath your fingernails." It feels like a relic reunited with its original setting after having been figure lost or only seen in a dream. Betimes I glanced around for the traveling lamp while standing beside the curvature, hearing myself call the datelessly abandoned vizards and leasing and be faithfully young-eyed. I returned once more to the champagne and sat among the stones in silence. I received no visions or visitations, no inspiration to invent an incantation, and in this vacuum of communication, I only experienced the sense or perchance suggestion of the imposing press of eras and atmosphere. And now I notice this restless weather. Shy beams of sunlight moving sideways through the strings of remaining rain. This is called Rubber Buttons. It needs to be kept simmering and time should flow slowly and quietly. Let's go! My shoelaces are undone, which means someone likes me as much as I love to see a basket of swimming snowflakes. My shoelaces are undone, so I throw them next to the trunk full of styrofoam tongues, and the person who brought them yells, "Thank you." The first person in the castle has the obvious advantage if they wish to scrape their fingernails against century-old windows. They can concentrate vacantly while being unfailingly polite and insisting their hands are made of the same sand as found outside on the beach. They know there is no joy in failure for their friends and that the fun and restoration happens once the work is done. The second person in the castle has obvious ease with boldly seizing treasure only they can see through a fizzing camera lens. They can research quietly while having no qualms about their ambition outstripping their abilities in assessing gaudy antiques. They know there is no lemon rich enough in sourness to let their taste get challenged into swallowing insects and soiled tents. The third person in the castle has the obvious edge when turning their profile to face the East End in hopes of repairing a table leg. They can dutifully saw and sweep the dust into the bin until the bell sounds for them to begin slicing up vegetables in the kitchen. They know there is no creek deep enough to keep them from molding jellies into a series of perfectly semi-translucent wedges. I want brass buttons for my cousin. Because I could not count for cufflinks, they counted for me. Because I could not look for light bulbs, they looked for me. Because I could not dance for diamonds, they danced for me. They realize the chateau has the clear advantage as the place to evaluate flashy antiques. I want brass buttons for my cousin, but I make the rubber buttons I wear for myself. While I sew, I look at the library and remember each of my most memorable finds. I want brass buttons for my cousin, but I make the rubber buttons I wear on my jacket. I buy the materials from the tan-toothed man who sold my mom a gold wishing box. I want brass buttons for my cousin because when I preach with the collar, it preaches with me. I want brass buttons for my cousin because when I move with the minnows, they move with me. They realize the chateau has the clear advantage when you're evaluating flashy antiques. Let's go! That's all right. You know that. I know that. How many other people know that? What is he up to? What is he up to? It's all right. We all know that. Everybody knows that. My shoelaces are undone, so I only walk sideways and photograph a plum-purple terracotta planet with a flag with a price tag sticking out of it. Though it's very, very, very hard to know. Truly. It is very hard to know. My shoelaces are unknown, which means someone likes me as much as I love wearing an apricot ascot while hearing about Korean camping sites. The first person in the tower can brighten their senses by energetically exchanging sunglasses and hairstyles. Once safely ensconced up at the top, they can cheerfully sing along with anything, though they prefer Caruso and Ragtime to songs they don't already know. There is usually a fixed point in the distance for them to focus on things such as a helicopter or hawk taking off shortly after dawn. The second person in the tower can loudly shout, "How I love my girl!" which echoes back so overwhelmingly they can think that they are in a private booth. They can detect the scent of her shampoo in the wind and look down to see her looking up and running towards them. There is normally an iron staircase nailed in 40 years ago, which serves as the one modern addition to the edifice. The third person in the tower can tell endless jokes over dinner about the rabbits they saw nipping chocolate from their mother's open purses. They can wear a lei around their necks, which contrasts sharply with their pinstripe sport coat and tartan flat cap. There is always a sauna where they can fall asleep underneath a slippery painting of their father, all dressed up as a captain. My shoelaces are undone. They lay underneath the warmth of the sun. This is a true depiction, recited with excellent diction. Let's go! And now I recall other memories. From walking around the castle, the humidity kept at bay, clouds letting loose only hints of rain, and vines intertwining across each other, and each new flower that blooms another gift for the dozens of bees in love with the newness of June. It's all on top of my eyes. It's all on top of my eyes. I greet the puppies with a smile and attempt to comb my hair for a while. I on my time on the red velour sofa. It's not mauve, it's not puce, it doesn't look anything like you. It's ugly, it's red, it's got plastic cushions. I spilled my apple juice on that sofa. Or is it a love seat, or is it a futon? It might be a bidet for all I can see. But whatever the hell it is, I don't want to sleep on it or eat your chocolate cake anywhere near it. I don't even want to go in your house because your dog humps my leg and your boyfriend picks my teeth and your dad chews my eyelash and there's not 1 inch of floor space clean enough to lick. You turn my water brown. You see now Granddad dresses like a clown. He's got a big red nose. It's not nearly as revolting as that sofa. Oh, by the way, I'm not coming over tonight, so quit following me down the hall or hitting on me in the toilet stall. Because any house with that much Elvis on velvet won't find me on their front porch swing or the Norman Rockwell painting. But maybe I will drop by dressed in armor and a satin hat with some flowers for the maid and cocktails for the cat and never got me in the sack and a muzzle for that dog. And I'll cut out your nose hair and put on your pancakes and yell, supper is served, so the butler can take the night off and throw some darts at Granddad. Very well deserved, might I add. And for dessert, I'll serve pigs in a blanket garnished with spaghetti Suzette with some lighter fluid and a lock your mom's people care to torch that fucking sofa to the ground because it ain't Art Deco no matter how hard you try. And the vinyl siding merry-go one place. It really ain't Little Big House after all. Now is it, Toots? All on top of my eyes. The curious sage and an orange and brown dashiki. All on top of my eyes. All on top of my eyes. All on top of my eyes. Lithium batteries in between her teeth. She holds a screwdriver dipped in green paint as she walks over underground cables. All on top of my eyes, in between her toes. She staves off headaches with gallons of water and sleeping when she can. All on top of my eyes. The swells of excitement are just one continued drone. Close concert of ideas, stretching fingers. You did a great job today. Devoted. Seriously. All on top of my eyes. One wonder. One today. Blue waves sprayed gently onto the window. It remained an unfaded crescent reaching over the rooftop. Birds flew through untethered. Droplets yawned in sonorous applause. The shape succumbed, giving way by matching passing movements. As when water splashes in the sky, a maypole stands unraveled while a sunfish kisses a butterfly. The fences were then a canvas, soaked tissue paper, sprung over electrical wires, fragile forktails freshly shaven. As bronze tiger beetles glanced up at the heavens, dance the night away! And that, my friends, yet another exciting edition of the Quarantine Stream. We hope that you've enjoyed it. We also greatly hope that you enjoyed our wonderful opening acts, Wow Beautiful, and, of course, Mount Haku. Let's hear the Quarantine Stream theme one more time, shall we? No. That's not right. Come on now. Let's do it. Beautiful. All right, everybody. Until next, well, by the grace of God, we will be back next week. I'm fairly confident that we will be. Until then, everyone, here's the really important part. Stay safe. Stay smart. Here's the really important part. Stay free. Because you already are. Do not trust anybody who tells you that you are not free, because then they will try to be your priest in one form or another. They will try to be your ruler. The only reason they think you are not free is because they think that they are your ruler. So, do not forget that. Stay free because you already are. Seriously. Okay? Anyway, like I said, by the grace of God, we will be back next week. Until then, hope you enjoyed watching. Thank you, everybody. Bye.